Hi, this is Janet with Try It Like It Created, and today I am doing a card with Fairy Stampers Design Team, and this is the video design team, and I'm going to be working with FHS 018 Fairy House, and this is what the stamp looks like, and I already have it on my works platform ready to ink up, and I'm going to be stamping it onto a piece that I decorated using the jelly plate. So I'm just going to ink this up, and I think because of the size of the stamp, I may need to stamp it more than once. And so that's why I have my paper attached down to my works board so that I can give it a good press. Rub over it good. And hopefully not move anything when I lift up. And let's give it a see. Yeah, we're going to have to stamp more than once. And so I'm going to pay attention to the areas that didn't stamp well. And make sure I give them some extra pressure. So now I'm just pinpointing the areas that need some additional stamping. So now I have my piece stamped on my paper, and I like how it looks. However, the paper I was working on was not stiff enough for what I want to do with this technique. So I'm going to take a piece of cardstock and back it. And so I'm just going to run this cardstock through my Xyron. This is an older machine, but they all work the same. So just putting some adhesive on that, set that aside, give it a good press to make sure everything is covered well. Then I'm going to peel off plastic. And my piece is all sticky. And then I'm going to set my stamped image right on top of this. Make sure I get everything on there well. Alright. And then I am going to do a kind of a fussy cut all the way around this piece. So I'm going to take my scissors and just, take my time going in here and cutting around the stamped image. So I'm going to spend some time doing that, and I will come back and show you what it looks like when I'm done with that. Okay, so I have finished fussy cutting, and the other thing I have done is I have cut out the window, and I did that off camera. I cut it with an X-Acto knife, and the reason I did it off camera is because it is such a fussy little detail. I really needed to get right on top of it, but now the window panes are not as strong as I'd like them to be. So what I've done here is I have taken a piece, can you see this? It's a piece of clear plastic, and it's actually just from a bag that I had in, and I keep those in my scraps just for this purpose. And so what I'm going to do here is just run a little bit of adhesive around this heart and probably right onto those cross hairs if I can. And the reason I'm using this is that it's a really sticky glue and I don't want it all over my fingers right now. And then I want to take my piece of acetate and stick that right on top. Now this doesn't really add anything dimensionally to the card, but what it does do is it supports those little areas so they don't break. And the reason that I need to do that is because I'm going to cut the door so it hinges open. And so our hinge is right here on the door. And so I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and just follow along this black line here. And I'm freehanding this to cut. And so as I focus on this, I tend not to talk much, but I think you understand why. You'll notice here as I cut, I'm moving the blade and the paper as I need to. Alright. So my next step is I'm going to use one of these little embellished candy dots for the door. And I just had this in my stash. And so I thought this would work really well. I knew I wanted to enhance the door handle. I just wasn't completely sure until I saw this. And I think that's going to work great on there. So I'm just going to hold it for a second to make sure it's, there we go. All right. Show you our next step. I have another piece here that I've done with my jelly plate. I'm going to put that on the top of our card, and so you can see it just has ever so slight little space around it. And if you look closely, I don't know if you can see it, but there is some glitter here to the paper, and I want to enhance that, and I want to darken the edges. So the first thing we're going to do here is take some broken china distress oxide, and I am just going to go around the edges here to kind of blend and darken things up. And you can see this paper I'm working with is very thin, similar to copy paper, and so I want to be careful along those edges that I don't fold it up on itself. Alright, but just want to give some extra attention to this. Alright, now let's see how this is looking on here. Do we need more? Alright, I like that. I think I might just go ever so slightly darker around the edges with this chip sapphire. And what I mean is, I mean really, really lightly, barely touching that edge. You see me moving it away here. I'm always checking it on the white background to see what it looks like. Alright, then bring our piece back in and you can see how that is starting to look. Now the next step is I'm going to spray this with some shimmering mist. And I'm going to do this off camera just because it's going to be in my spray box. And it's hard to videotape that. But what I want to show you is that anytime you're working with a spray, you want to swirl it, make sure you're shaking it up well enough. But what you don't want to do is shake it back and forth like so, because you don't want to gum up the spray hose. Alright, so I'm going to shake this up and give it a spurts, let it dry, and then I'll be back. Alright, so I just wanted to show you that this piece is now done, and I don't know if the camera can really pick up the iridescence that's here. Maybe in some of the darker colors you might be able to see it, but it is there, and I'm seeing it all over. The paper is shimmering. And then the next thing we're going to do, of course, is to put something in the doorway. And so what I've cut out here is a piece of yellow cardstock, and it's going to go right in the doorway. And the next thing I'm going to do with that is I'm going to do my homemade gold glimmer spray on it, and then I'm also going to spray it with this Aurora by Zinc to give it some texture. And once again, both of these things I'm going to have to do off camera, so I'll show you what it looks like when I get that done. Alright, so I've done that. I don't know if you can see, there we go, if you can see some of the glimmer on there. And now what we're going to do is we're going to step that. Of course, with a fairy, we need to get a fairy in our little fairy house. And so I'm using a Condo Dweller here. And I'm just going to ink her up and give it a go. One little stamp in the center here of our piece of yellow, because she's going to answer the door. And there we have her. So now I'm going to take this Nouveau Aqua Shimmer, which I'll just show you here, draws in kind of a gold color. Let me get a little bit more going here. There we go. Alright, so there's the shimmer, and I'm just going to kind of shimmer out from her, kind of radiate out on the yellow. It's not going to show up much, of course, on the yellow background, but we're just going to add in and definitely shimmer up those little wings if we can, adding an excessive amount of glitter there for her. Alright, so we have our pieces here. We're ready to start putting everything together, and I'm going to set the card off to the side for a moment while I run this through the Zyron. And so we're just going to add adhesive to the back of that, and then I'm also going to run our little fairy right through there as well at the same time, and move that out of the way. And give these a nice rub to make sure that they have their adhesive on them, and then peel off the plastic sheet. Alright, so I'm going to peel off the blue backing, and I'm going to leave the little yellow piece on there for now. And then we're going to take this over to our card and stick it down. So remember, this has a very little bit of white showing, and I need to stick it down just a little bit more. I'll center a little bit. Another tip is to use this piece behind it to see how it's going to lay down. And I can see that I can move this up just a little bit. them look too much. We're coming close here. I'm just a little crooked. Let's take a look at that. I think that's going to be as good as I can get. Alright, so I'm going to pull the sheet out, stick it down, call it done. Alright, so now we know that this is going to sit here, but I'm going to raise it up with some foam tape. So that means our little fairy here is going to go right in the doorway. And once again, I'm going to use that same trick with the paper. So I'm going to decide where I want my house. Alright, lift it up and look to center the fairy in the door. I think that's going to look good. Let's just double check. I want her to move over just a little bit so I can just move the acetate or the plastic paper. Alright, I think that looks good. So now I can just hold it down in place, pull that out, and stick her down to the card. Now look how crooked that is. And that's not going to really matter because we're not going to see it, right? Because this is going to cover it. So now I'm going to put my foam tape all over the back of this to lift it up. And then we're going to be close to finish, I think. Just some last looks. See if there's anything else we need here. I'm using a generous amount because I want to support this whole piece. I don't want it to move on me, or I want it to be nicely firmly lifted off of the page. I hope that makes sense. Alright, so all we have to do now is decide how we want that and remove these. Got one left here. Alright. So I'm going to open the door to make sure I have her in the center, and then I'm looking left to right to make sure I'm centered that way as well. And then I'm just going to place it down, and that should be it. And so we have our little fairy house, and if we open the door, there she is. So I'm going to leave this sentiment free. Of course, you could add something up here. You could go in and color and enhance some of these pieces, which I think I might do here. So there we have it. Hope you enjoyed this one.